It is a Monday once again, and that means Mitchell Paige is with us, even though there was no Indiana football to consume this weekend. There was other football to consume, and we'll talk Indiana, of course. But I do want to start off welcoming in Mitchell, asking him how he enjoyed his bye week.
Yeah, usually on a bye week. Well, thank you. I guess I should start with thanks for having me on again, John. It's always a pleasure. Um, Usually on a bye week, I wouldn't even turn on the TV, and because our squad is good, I'm watching every other team, seeing how is Indiana going to beat these guys in the college football playoff. So I watched a lot of football.
It is definitely, a different world that we're living in now, at least from the Indiana perspective, where it does feel like now that we're about to enter the back half of the season, there is so much that we are paying attention to, as you mentioned, that not that we wouldn't necessarily pay attention to it in seasons past, but there's a new level of interest because there is that possibility of, okay, maybe we do meet one of these teams down the road in the postseason.
Yeah, I'm dissecting it like I'm a GA for the actual team, just making my notes when we get our name called inevitably, and I think it is inevitable. We'll find out a little bit more, but yeah, it's been good, and I think it's you watch other teams and you watch how hard it is to just win, and I think we've talked about this a lot. I don't care who you're playing; it's just hard to win, and thinking about Indiana and their schedule or whatever, the way in which they're winning and doing it repeatedly, it just reminds me how, I mean, it's impressive. You cannot say that it's not impressive because I'm watching these top ranked teams struggle with stinky teams every single week. So beating a team by 30 points is not easy, right? It's not easy, and Indiana just continues to do that. So,
and I gotta say, I love seeing every team that faces, and maybe not every team, but I love seeing many of the middle tier Big Ten teams that face UCLA, for example, struggle to beat them on the road. Whereas Minnesota did become the second Big Ten team, I believe, to get a road win on an opposite coastline, because neither of the West Coast teams or the East Coast teams now, except for Indiana or Minnesota, have been able to get a road win in those environments.
yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard. Minnesota had just beaten USC, who gave now the number 3 team in the country everything they wanted and more in Penn State. And they go out to play UCLA. I don't care that it's a different game, it's a different week, it's the same team. And they're in a dogfight. A dogfight for 4 quarters. Indiana hasn't been in a dogfight for more than 10 minutes.
That's true. They've never trailed. I know we talked about the stat where, at least I know I mentioned this. I don't know if you and I talked about it, where in the first quarter, Indiana's not allowed anybody to score. And I think they've scored 73 points. And then the fourth quarter, I think it's like 80 something to 13. I don't have the number right in front of me, but it just shows that Cignetti gets his guys prepped. And I do want to throw this. I did a little, I guess it's kind of research. It's unofficial research, if you will. One thing people like to throw out is, what is a coach's record coming off of a bye week? And for Curt Cignetti specifically, I couldn't find anything that was prior to him being an Elon. So Elon up until this year, of course, is what I was able to look through. And there's also a couple of extra bye weeks that I included where there was like COVID postponements where they had to have a week off that they weren't expecting. And then also I included, there were like, whenever he was at the FCS level, there were times before the playoffs where you would have a week in between. I think that only happened once before the playoffs. But Cignetti's record from Elon until now, after the bye week, actually, I want to ask you, Mitchell, what do you think it is? There's 11 games on here. What do you think is Curt Cignetti's record coming off of a bye?
Just based on the way that his teams have been prepared without a bye, I would guess 10-1 or better.
10-1, absolutely. Yeah. That one loss being in 2022 to the Louisville Cardinals. And I don't remember exactly what I saw the score was of that game, but 10-1. And I don't think that's really a super surprising stat to most people, considering every other stat that we talk about with Cignetti and his win-loss record is usually very positive. So fans worried about maybe how this team may look coming off of an off week, I would say trying to put your worries aside as Nebraska comes to town.
Yeah, I can't wait, dude. I got my tickets this morning already. We got an Airbnb. We will be
It
there
is an announced sellout.
early and often. I know a bunch of former players that are going back. Homecoming obviously helps, but place is going to be buzzing. Got Big Noon Kickoff coming in. We got the Barstool boys coming in.
I didn't know Barstool was going to be there. So two of the, I guess, pre-football, whatever you want to call them. Obviously, it's not game day, but heck, I'll even say this. Even though it doesn't have the brand recognition of an ESPN College Game Day, I think the product that Fox puts out is a lot more polished and enjoyable to consume than ESPN's version.
We'll agree to disagree.
And that's fine. We can disagree with that. Yeah.
It's definitely more polished. It's a bunch of professionals up there. I'm just not sure that it's more fun to watch. But it's a huge show. They go to the biggest games every week, and they're coming to Bloomington. And then you got Dave Portnoy and Big Cat and the boys hosting their show there too. It's just going to be an insane weekend. There, I can't even barely contain my excitement.
And I'll say, and maybe we've said this every week, to be honest, this is another one of those games where not only is this kind of it's not your first time in front of a national audience, but it's the first time where the national audience is really paying attention to you. Mm-hmm. So if you win this game and you continue to do it in the convincing fashion that you have every other time you've taken the field this season, that elevates, excuse me, your expectations to another level. I don't want to necessarily say the ceiling has been raised because I think we already kind of know at this point what the ceiling is. It's just sometimes it's hard to accept that maybe the ceiling truly is an 11-1 type regular season. And I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm quite ready to say that they would beat Ohio State on the road because no matter who you are, that's going to be a tough environment. But to fully realize that this team could potentially find their way to a 10-11 win type season before you even get to postseason play, this is just the next step in that direction, and it continues to affirm all the beliefs that could be the case.
Yeah, I think opposing teams have already realized it. They've already figured it out. We're not sneaking up on anybody. I think people that actually watch the games and understand what we're trying to do and why we're so effective understand. Now there's this national audience or people that aren't like really watching that you've got to quote unquote convince. And this is going to be a huge step towards that. And I think the danger, and I doesn't seem to have been a problem yet, but Curt Cignetti's teams, everybody that they interview, every player talks about the chip on their shoulder, proving ourselves, prove the haters wrong, whatever. You go out there and smoke Nebraska, everybody's going to start talking about, and I've seen it already a couple times, the feel-good story of Indiana. Almost like it's not a real thing. It's nice that they're winning. Everybody's cheering for them. Yippee kind of deal.
Just like in 2020. That's how that was.
Yeah. Versus this Indiana team is for real. They're physical, they're fast, and they're going to punch somebody in the mouth. And I don't think opposing teams will be thinking anything but we better get ready. Because if they don't, they're going to get run over. But we're going to have to prepare ourselves for oh my gosh, Indiana's so nice to watch. And that can be infectious to the players. So new challenges arise after this week. But I think we talked about it. Did you see the spread's only 5 points?
So it started off at the beginning of last week at 3.5, and I'm looking at it right now in front of me, and I'm just looking. This is how it's evolved via, I believe, ESPN spreads. They have their own betting sports book, but it's currently sitting at 6.5 that I can see.
Is it already up to 6.5?
Yeah.
I got it at 5 yesterday. I told you I would have I would have taken them like 12.5, I think was the number that I said.
I hate to say that. That's not me saying that they'll win by 14, but I think this team has the ability to beat Nebraska by 2 scores if they play to their strengths.
That's not
maybe
enough.
more than that.
Yeah. If Indiana plays to their strengths, this is a 4-touchdown kind of game because they're going to be able to heat up the quarterback, and the quarterback has already shown that he ain't about it just yet. If you let him stand there, he'll spit it everywhere. But if you get in his face, you're hitting him, you're knocking him down. That offense just kind of sputters. They don't.
I mean, they struggle to put up points against Rutgers, who got completely throttled by Wisconsin this weekend, which that was, for those who follow along with my betting picks on this show, this was not a good week to do so because I took Rutgers minus 2.5. That was not a good week for me, or a good pick for me. But I know Indiana's defense has shown vulnerability at times. I do think there will probably be some moments this weekend where Raiola is able to make a couple of good plays and maybe put Indiana on their toes a little bit. Mm-hmm. But anytime we've seen the Hoosiers in those types of positions, they've always responded. So continuing to do so will be, I mean, really just the challenge. Continue to be what you've already been, which is kind of weird saying that. This is usually not what we're saying at this point in the season for any Indiana football team. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. It feels like they need to do exactly what they're doing, which is maybe the game is a touchdown or a 10-point game at halftime. Nebraska's got to start throwing the ball around, and that's when Indiana's D-line heats up, and that's when they really start causing havoc. So I expect it to be close and fun to watch in the first half. Stay in the stands, fans.
Yeah, this will be a good case study with the sold-out game and, a game in which you're favored and have a chance to prove things to a national audience. Once again, can the fans be in that same mindset? Because we know what they do for a big Indiana basketball game. They're going to be there from before start till after the finish. Will that be the case for the Memorial Stadium crowd this weekend?
Yeah, and being on Fox, it's a big game on Fox. It's a chance to start chipping away at the narrative about IU fans. So stay in the stands. But it just feels like a kind of a slow churn type game. I think that Indiana's just going to kind of lean on Nebraska. They don't run it particularly well. I think they play really good on defense. So my guess is it's going to take some time to unlock what they're doing on defense. And you're going to have to just slowly but surely build a lead. And once you build a lead with an offense that doesn't click really, and maybe this is the week they do, who knows, but Nebraska has not done so up to this point. Once you start to gain a little lead, mistakes start happening, and then you get good field position. Things start flipping on their head, and it feels kind of like a waterfall. That's the kind of game that I anticipate just because Nebraska is tough on defense.
This kind of feels like for Indiana, if you can surpass the 28-point mark, which they've done every game this season, it feels like that kind of guarantees you victory in this type of game.
Yeah, it doesn't. I just don't see, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see 4 touchdowns out of the Nebraska offense. I've watched them, I guess, only a couple times. I haven't watched every snap, but the freshman quarterback is going to be good. But the same thing that's happening at Tennessee right now with Nico Iamaleava, it's just not crisp. He's had guys running him wide open, and as you get heated up, your internal clock starts going faster, and you just start missing throws. And I think that Raiola has been a victim of that as well. So Indiana, I think the biggest key to the game is putting pressure on the quarterback, establishing the offensive and defensive line, and then everything else kind of takes care of itself. You put pressure on the quarterback, establish the line of scrimmage, the big plays come, wide receivers will start to make things happen. I think we've talked about it. You've got a wide receiver core that I would argue is second or third best in the top 2 or 3, I guess. Some people maybe argue best in the country, don't have the best player, or not in the country, in the conference. I think that other teams have better individual players, but across the board, guys that can go get you a first down, they're definitely in the top echelon of the conference. So you allow those guys to start getting in a rhythm, making plays as you establish the line of scrimmage and as you start to get better field position because you're playing good defense. They're just playing really good complementary ball. And you said it exactly. Do exactly what we've been doing. Establish lines of scrimmage and put pressure on the quarterback.
So funny how I mentioned it feels like at least 28 points would be the key here. So I'm looking at Nebraska's scores, and every game that didn't involve playing against an FCS or a G5 opponent, they played 4 of those games, correct? Colorado, Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers. They've not found a way past that 28 point mark. 28 points against Colorado, 24 in overtime against Illinois, 28 against Purdue, and then only 14 against Rutgers. So I do
They only
feel like
scored
that's
28
probably
against Colorado.
yeah. So they got a big on them early and they didn't put the pedal to the metal against them. I believe that is how that game worked.
That's what I'm saying. They felt like they smoked them. And
I mean, they did. It was 28-10, but I do think
but that's not
that's
definitely not indicative. That I think that kind of further proves your point, as you're saying, that this is not a high volume, high scoring offense. They make their hay on defense. They're going to try to suffocate you, and
it very much could be. And if Nebraska does find a way to get past kind of that 4 touchdown mark, then at that point we probably have to talk more seriously about Indiana having defensive issues, and hopefully that ends up not being the case. I mean, Indiana may win this game 42-39 for all we know, or maybe they lose it 42-39. We'll see. But
no.
Any closing thoughts for as we move into this? I mean, it's a big homecoming week in general. You got Hoosier hysteria on Friday for basketball, which is crazy. Hoosier hysteria is going to take place before Indiana football has suffered any loss, which is obviously never happened before.
Yeah, I just cannot imagine the environment. That's all I'm thinking about. There was even a buzz for Maryland that there hadn't been in a long time just walking into the stadium. People are excited. I can't imagine what it's going to be on Saturday. I just can't wait. I'm pumped.
I'm very upset that I won't be in attendance because of the Louisville-Miami game also being at noon. But in consolation, I am looking forward to just watching on big noon kickoff to see what the environment is like from the TV standpoint. And hopefully it makes me jealous, because if it doesn't make me jealous, then that means people didn't show out for it, which they will, though. I know they will.
Yeah, I'll send you pictures.
Okay. Mitchell, appreciate you as always, and hopefully we're talking about a 7-0 Indiana team next Monday.
That's the plan. I fully expect it.